Lynx, I gotta say, I think you're wrong, man. Alts are the way to go. We have a lot of people that like to play other characters, and to play the one character.
Hold on. Look, it's a waste of time. It's
3 hours later.
Oh, you want to meet? You want to settle this? You want
be mad about it? We're gonna be mad about it, right?
Fine. Let's do it.
We'll be back. We're gonna be back. On my main too. Look, this is how it's gonna happen. This is how we're gonna do it.
Oh no! What are you doing? Stop! Oh!
Damn it!
It turns out that alts are not the right choice. Welcome to Pantheon. I'm your host, Rick, and joining me today is Lynx and Eddie G, with our special guest, Ankalegon. Welcome, Ank.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys.
Welcome.
Glad you're here.
Welcome to the broadcast, the arrogant bastard. Dizok Imperials. Not really, but he was tagged with that name early. Actually, I think I was. I don't know. But yes, go ahead.
I think we all were.
Ank is joining us today as a guest as he demoed Monsters and Memories with us this weekend. For those of you that don't know, Ank is our group's Dire Lord, and he does a whole lot of tanking for all of us, all the time. And we were all eager to kind of check out this brand new testing MMO coming out called Monsters and Memories. And there's a lot of differences and similarities between Pantheon and Monsters and Memories. And we're here to kind of talk about our playtest, or the time we had on the playtest weekend, in contrast to Pantheon. A lot of us got this idea, at least, from our plays on Pantheon, and I know that we saw, at least a few of us saw on Discord, Savanya mentioned it briefly.
Yeah, I'm kind of surprised that you went to check this out. Sorry, I mean, I that's good that they're checking out the competition, so to speak.
It's interesting that she made it public too. She wasn't I snuck off and did my own thing. She's like, I tried it. I want to see what they're doing, and they're looking forward to their progression. So,
let's see.
Yeah, there's a lot to really unpack and go over stuff with here today. But I know we all had our 4 individual experiences, and I guess kind of just right off the top, Eddie, I know you had probably the lowest amount of playtime there, but what were your initial reactions? How did you like it?
Okay, the last test that they had, I absolutely hated the game. I hated the graphics. I don't know what it was. Maybe I was in a bad mood. I don't know. This time, I really enjoyed it. I liked the fact. Now, I didn't fight one thing, so I can't even talk about the battle system or the combat system. So I really like the fact that there was a lot to explore in the city. What was it? Night Harbor, I think. I spawned that. I got used to the graphics after a while. I liked it, but did I love it? No. To me, Pantheon is, first and foremost. I guess I agree with Savanja. It's number one in my heart. But I liked it. I thought I was going to hate it, but I liked it. So I did some quests. Some quests led me astray, like 3 zones astray. But I enjoyed the quest. And I will say, we were talking a little bit before the show about how big Night Harbor is, and in contrast to like Freeport in the original EverQuest. And although it had several sections in Freeport, this seems still much bigger and filled with more NPCs. So overall, I thought it was good, but I'm not giving up my Pantheon.
I hear you there. And I know we all have a different perspective on things because some of us have more experience than others. Lynx, for instance, I know you have probably the most experience of any of us in Monsters and Memories. So what were your thoughts of this recent playtest?
for the recent one, I kind of started a little bit ahead of everybody else that came to join us to try it from the guild. Started off with a level 11 archer, who's a very incomplete class, but I was still enjoying it enough to get past that because I was out exploring, I was consumed with learning new areas, seeing new monsters, trying some of the quests, hanging out with my guildmates, y'all. who were there. I enjoyed it. I discovered a lot of stuff just within like Night Harbor itself. You can literally hang out in the city and level up. I found stuff even when I got to level 15 that was still red to me. There's a whole pirate hangout area near the docks. There was undead that has a day-night cycle like Pantheon has for the graveyard. During the day there was some beetles and bats, and at night it transitions to all undead, and they were higher level. There was some undead near the Acropolis area that you can mess around with. There's some super low-level stuff deep down in the basements. Apparently, there's even a sewer system / dungeon in there. Didn't find it. Looking forward to finding it. I had a good time, though.
Great. Yeah, a lot of us really did. And I guess lastly, Ank, you are our guest on the podcast. So tell us, what were your reactions to Monsters and Memories this weekend?
Sure, yeah. I found it to be an enjoyable game. Similar to Eddie, Pantheon is in my heart. I'm really enjoying Pantheon right now. Monsters and Memories scratched a different kind of itch. I feel like currently in the gaming world, there's enough room for both of them. I wouldn't say one, dominates the other. Both games are developing. Both games have different play styles, but they are both MMOs. Mm-hmm. I really enjoyed the aspect of being able to hang out with you guys, with my guildmates, and explore. But it was also a little reminiscent of the old EQ days, right?
It was.
So the combat was a little simpler, right? Not as dynamic as Pantheon's. And at this stage in my gaming career, I'm looking for something a little more dynamic, right? I'm not looking for just an auto attack stand there and maybe an interrupt here and there. Like, I like the rotations that we have in Pantheon, but overall, I did enjoy the game. I think it's fun.
Great, yeah. And I mean, I think that's kind of all of our things, our reactions to it. And so, as part of more of a deep dive into it, in contrast to Pantheon, there are dungeons as well in M&M. And while we had limited experiences, most of us got to around the level 10 mark. There was some dungeoning that we all did together. There was the Wormwood, or what was the name of it? Wormwood, is that right?
Wormsbane. We did the Wormsbane Undead dungeon was the first dungeon that we got to. That heavy undead, it was very, very tunneled. It reminded me of entering Guck, right? When you kind of go in there and you're funneled into a tunnel. Mm-hmm. Then Lynx and I actually did it to the next level. We explored another dungeon when we made it to the level 12 area called Tel Akir, which was an Ashira dungeon and was an outdoor dungeon. So we kind of got to see two different dungeons, one indoor, one outdoor.
And I think we even saw a third one. Lynx, were you there with us when or maybe it was you, Ank, when we found the spider dungeon with the brood mothers?
Oh, yes, the mini crypt, I think it was called, right? Yes,
yep.
Yeah.
The infested crypt.
Infected, yeah, that's what it was. Yes.
So what did we think? What was our impressions in comparison, even in terms of EverQuest's dungeoneering? Was this the same as Pantheon's dungeons, or did it feel different to you?
It felt different to me. I think Pantheon's dungeons are a little more dynamic. There's more to explore. It's not.
They're multi-layered. It's like the detail, at least from what I saw. The detail to these dungeons wasn't really up to par what Pantheon's putting out. There's certainly, if you think of Halnir's Cave, compared to some of these dungeons, the textures are low quality. Let's face it, the graphics aren't the greatest. To me, I don't think there's any comparison as far as that goes. But you guys would know better. You spent time. I was stuck in the middle of the ocean for like 30 minutes, which brought hilarity to my guild. By the way,
you had a whole different experience.
Yes, yes, you did.
As a testament to your incredible navigatory skill, you were within 10 minutes inside the desert city, found yourself lost at sea.
Yes.
Which was a real good time for all of us on Discord.
Well, listen, they gave you guys laughs. I'm happy to oblige with my buffoonery.
Hey, we were happy to have you, and even if you weren't there with us, you were with us in spirit.
Yes.
So what do you guys think about it? Lynx, you're a dungeon. I mean, you're a guy who likes to explore. What did you think? What was your takeaways?
I regret not taking a stealth class. I was very limited. I couldn't skulk around and sneak through corridors and find little spots and nooks and crannies. Oh, sorry about that. I don't know. I think the first 2 or 3 dungeons I explored, I don't know. They were very, I don't want to sound rude, I guess linear in comparison to what Pantheon's offered so far. I mean, if I compared it to Enclave, it just dwarfs every dungeon I got to explore. Again, I haven't explored all of them that are available in M&M or Monsters and Memories.
Right.
But Pantheon has put a lot of love into their dungeons. Even if you go back to Halnir's Cave, it's vastly different by design, by design, by style, by challenge, by difficulty. There's nothing even like Hangor. It's an outdoor dungeon. It's challenging. Everywhere you go, there's a boss. There's really great mechanics.
Yeah.
There seems to be lacking still, from my experience with M&M. It's just, I think it could get a little more challenging, but maybe that's what they're going for.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that altogether, a conglomerate of it really represents that it is trying to follow in the footsteps of EverQuest, but it's trying to carve a bit of a new path, but I think it's a little bit more of the same than it is of something new. And that brings us to our next topic, though, is the newness of the community of Monsters and Memories. And now we all know Pantheon has a really reactive and supportive community. And did you guys find that the community in game of Monsters and Memories was equal to the Pantheon community? And what was as our guest? Why don't you answer first?
Sure. I saw some good conversations going into OOC. There was several people that seemed very helpful, wanted to help the new player base get introduced to the game. And I remember one person saying, like, hey, if you have questions, ask me. He was not affiliated with the company that's producing Monsters and Memories. There seemed to be some good etiquette, I noticed, in groups. Trying to shout train in the dungeon, making sure that you weren't stepping on other people's toes. I did see some leapfrogging that happened once or twice. But also out in the open world, I saw community being respectful of each other. Try not to set up a camp too close to someone. Try not to run your pulls over another group. And when that was happening, there was tells and apologies and, hey, like, let's sort this type of thing out. So I found the community to be overall mature, and I liked that. That had me piqued my interest a lot, that we had a mature community that seemed to want to respect each other's playtime, because, as adults, right, it's really hard for us to carve out that playtime.
Yeah, and you know what? I think that because this was a limited 3-day playtest weekend, it forced the mentality that a lot of us have to try and experience as much as we can, as fast as we can, and just like, let's get it done. But we all still took the time to be nice to our fellow player, and I think that really sells the message that it's got a good community. Lynx and Eddie, would you agree that this was a pretty decent community that we experienced?
Eddie?
Well, I'm going to be frank and honest. I kind of role-played my character from an old character I used to have on EverQuest. So any interaction I had in OC was basically I was trolling. Saying basically this game will not beat Pantheon. You're fools, blah, 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 blah. So I was not part of that goodwill force that you guys experienced.
Well, we were.
And I was penalized by the Monsters and Memories gods by getting lost at sea. So bad karma. That's what happened to me. So yeah, I can't speak to the community. You guys, like, I had no experience in dungeons, but it did seem like people were very helpful. So that's good, except for moi. Lynx, what'd you think?
Actually, because when I joined this test phase, I was already ahead of you guys in levels, so I intentionally hung out in the city, doing what I always do, talking in OOC, trying to help direct people to different NPCs or give them little tips and tricks. There was other like-minded individuals that we all got to get along with, which was really nice. Very strong community building there. I also saw a lot of GM activity, which was really nice. They were popping in the game, saying hi and hanging out, sometimes turning people into different illusions. They were interacting and engaging and trying to answer questions. And overall, I don't think I really had any unpleasant experiences, whether it was in town, hanging out at the bank, or looking for an NPC myself, or exploring a new dungeon, or trying to find a group, or just setting up a campfire, waiting for people to come and meet me, and random people would approach and hang out at the campfire. Never met them in my life, and they would just, hey, what are you doing? Oh, I'm looking for my corpse. Oh, man, I can't help you, but I can give you a torch. And they would go on their way. It's so, I don't know, it's fresh, it's nice. But also Pantheon has a really handy community, very friendly community, easy to interact with. I think they're both doing well.
Just one question for all of you. I mean, this game is targeted towards people of an older age, okay? I can't see a 20-year-old saying, hey, I want to play this game. They're just in a different mindset. You guys are real hardcore gamers. Do you see this? Like, I see Pantheon could sucker in some or bring in some younger people because of the graphics.
Right.
Do you think this game can take off, or is it going to basically stay with like an older generation?
I think a little of column A and a little of column B, because Monsters and Memories is very niche. It's going to only be really targeting people that have that wanderlust for the old days of EverQuest and these very trying and difficult games where it's more reminiscent of a Dark Souls game on steroids than it is something like Warcraft. It's night and day difference to something like World of Warcraft because it's not user friendly. It's not friendly to a new style of player, nor is it really friendly to someone who isn't very accustomed with that hardcore spell-based system like with Dungeons and Dragons in earlier editions. So I think that to really sum that up, it's not really geared for younger and newer players, Eddie.
Okay, Ank, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm going to agree with Rick. A and B, I do think it's going to be only a few of the younger generation would be joining this game. I think the name itself, Monsters and Memories, this younger generation doesn't have the memories from 25
That's
years.
right. That's a good point.
I think it says it all in the title itself. I don't think it's designed for those players. So yeah, I don't think it's going to attract. And something I wanted to kind of rewind back to, and because we're talking about the community, is the Pantheon community is equally as helpful as the Monsters and Memory community, and I think it has attracted some of the younger players. Right, so with these games, with any MMO, the community really is what can make or break the game. So if you can impart your value system onto a younger generation, right, it's going to propel it into the next generation of gamers. So yeah, to circle back to your point, I don't know how many young people will be joining Monsters and Memories, where I see more young people playing Pantheon.
Okay.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And if you've got an opinion on this, make sure you comment below. If you think that younger players would be more interested in this, definitely let us know.
Yeah, about any topic we're covering here.
Yeah.
Make sure in the comments. Also, remember to like and subscribe.
Always.
Engage with us.
Yes.
Keep in touch with us. Let's see what's going on in your lives. What are you experiencing? What do you want to see? What would you like to be a part of?
You know what I'd like to be a part of? Quest.
Is it Quest?
It's Quest.
Oh.
Surprise, right? Well, I didn't have a lot of experience doing quests in M&M in comparison to Pantheon. Now, the quest system is a little bit different. It's got a little bit more of a rudimentary interface system. There is a quest log, but it's much harder to discern what's happening with the quest in terms of where you have to go, as just like in Pantheon, Monsters and Memories does not contain a map, and there is no real way to navigate yourselves about unless you just do it with trial and error. So doing the quest is a little bit of a slowdown. It's a bit of a stumbling block in that terms. But that being said, I seemed to like the RP aspect of the quests. I played an enchanter, for instance. Surprise again. And when you start the newbie quests, it basically tells you to register with the town as a magic caster, or you could become some kind of apostate, which is basically a choice between good and evil right out the gate, which I found kind of cool.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah,
Options. I like that.
right. Did you guys find anything interesting like that too?
I only played Archer. It was very straightforward. You're an Archer. This is your goal. This is what you do in the game.
I like to start a quest. I mean, I had to find like 6 or 7 people. I did like the way the quest log would actually timestamp and kept track of the quest. And Lynx had mentioned also before the show that that you could use keywords, right? That would help you maybe help you with the quest.
Yeah, I found some stuff just by accident. I think I was exploring another area in the town. I found a priest all by themselves in a temple, and I thought, I wonder if there's a way to interact with them to have them cure like a disease or give me a small heal, or maybe I can contribute and pay for it. So I was messing around with keywords, and I said cure, and sure enough, it casted a cure disease on me. I had no disease, but it casted. So it's fun finding new experiences or new keywords or new quest lines that have been undiscovered, because this place is uncharted. It's unexplored for the most part. And when you want to find that new thing, it's exciting. You know, you get to share it with all your friends, or you share it with the public, or you update the wiki. I like that exploration.
In the old days, they used to have a thing called vector quests, where they would want you to go to a new area to find people in a certain section. And I felt like that was getting me acquainted to the city. Like I had to go find the illuminators. I had to go find a butcher. So I got to explore the whole city by finding these guys. I had to deliver a letter for my specific class. I know one of our friends got stuck in the wizard library for like 3 hours. That was that was certainly a detractor, but I thought the quests were good. That was my favorite part. I mean, I didn't kill anything, but still, I did like the quests.
Well, that's interesting since that was your intro quest. I had 2 different characters that I played, and both of my intro quests were more of a gather type and return. So I really didn't talk to too many NPCs. It was talk to my class guild master, so to speak, right? Then go talk to one other merchant who sent me to an innkeeper. Then I killed some beetles in a basement, and once I brought them enough beetle legs, I turned that in, and I went back to my guild master, and that was kind of the end of my intro quest. He rewarded me with a tunic, whereas my other class was similar. It was collect some bat wings. I turned in the bat wings, and something I noticed is that class, it was a druid, wasn't completed yet because after I had finished all the parts, it said, come see me later on, and I had a token. So at some point, maybe I'm supposed to return, when I'm higher level, maybe there's something going on there. The other quests I experienced in the game were a throwback to EverQuest, to what I call the Velius armor quests. So in the dungeon, in the Wormsbane dungeon, there was some named mobs, and those named mobs would drop class-specific armor drops that had no stats. Now, if you take that piece of armor to a specific NPC outside the dungeon and hand him some gems of a certain type, then that would turn that armor into a stat piece, right? So I haven't seen anything like that in Pantheon, right? I've seen a lot of, follow the quest lines, get the rewards, but I haven't seen a blank armor drop off a mob and then you turn that into another piece of armor. So that was the main difference that I noticed.
I guess it's similar to the Gadasi necklace in a way.
Well, the Gadasi necklace quest, right? That's something like that I haven't seen in Monsters Memory yet. Right. That's an epic quest where you're going to every zone, you're fighting named mobs, you're getting to clickies. I didn't see any clickies in Monsters and Memories, right? I found some false walls, but I never saw any clickies that I had to interact with.
Is there any multi-questing available in Monsters and Memories, or?
That's a good question.
Yeah, I didn't see any evidence of that.
There's an early on quest that does give you a clicky, but it's class specific for the Spellblade. Their newbie quest line turns into a reward that I believe is a necklace or a range slot, and it has a clicky effect. It's the only class that I saw that had one. I think maybe one other class had it, but I forget. But off the top of my dome, I know the Spellblade does have one, so that's interesting.
Yeah, and and Pantheon has all these great quests to start out with. Like you get your, think of your early quest to get your gathering tools, right? You have those little gathering quests just to get your gathering tools. You have the Huntress quest in Thornfall, where it's sending you to kill these nighttime spawn mobs. Those are very dynamic quests at a low level. I didn't see anything that dynamic in Monsters.
Right, I didn't either, and I felt like Pantheon pushes you more towards the questing. It's much more available to you, and you start off with a quest in your inventory that tells you to go get to the well, and then this guy gives you more quests, and it teaches you the system of the game. Whereas Monsters and Memories didn't really teach you that. It just kind of puts you into the game just like old school EverQuest, and I knew people that were having a difficult time even figuring out how to scribe your abilities because it's counterintuitive to the way that some of the more modern sword and board, sword, spell, and fantasy type games work. So there was a lot of similarity, but there was a lot of differences, and I think it boils down to the dynamicism, and that Pantheon offers more dynamic questing, whereas Monsters and Memories offers a more boilerplate kind of EverQuest styled, where it's go get me this item and hand it back to me, and it's not something more like go get this item, go to this place, and figure out why, and then return to me. So
I agree. Not as exploratory, so to speak. Right.
Right. And that kind of leads into our next point about game pacing, and that there's definitely a different pace between Pantheon and Monsters and Memories. Pantheon's much faster. The combat, at least, is significantly faster, and I think that all of us here could agree on that. Is there Eddie? What would you say?
For sure. I mean, the game and Pantheon, the running, everything is just so more frenzied and so much more frenetic, especially the combat.
Yes.
the combat system in Pantheon, again, I didn't fight anything. I did fight stuff on the first playtest I did. There's no comparison. I mean, it really isn't. It's, Pantheon just blows it away. All the things that incorporate the pace of the game. Even something as little as run speed and stamina and all these little intricacies that Pantheon has. I really thought as a game, things happen a lot more quickly than they do. Now, it could have been because it's a brand new spanking new game, and I didn't know where things were, but I felt like this Pantheon moves at a much faster rate.
How often did you guys hit the sprint key?
All the time.
Be honest.
Quite often.
Oh, I was missing that, Pantheon. I love you.
Yeah, I was missing that sprint big
Love
time.
it. I was even hitting the T key trying to stealth. No!
Yeah, some of the keybinds definitely threw me for a loop. Having to hit Q versus having to hit the tilde. That was definitely a through me. I was going back to Pantheon, hitting the wrong button to attack it the first day.
It's that muscle memory, and from playing hours and hours of Pantheon. So, how did you guys find the pacing? You guys were in dungeons. You guys were. You're all experts in combat system and all that stuff. What do you guys think?
Yes, to tell you the truth, as playing a tank in both the games during this playtest and normally, it was like the Monsters and Memories was an old school hit auto attack, maybe use an interrupt or a bash or a slam ability. So really, I'm toggling between, two abilities at times. Whereas, as a tank in Pantheon, right, I'm using 4 or 5 different abilities at a time. I don't have a set rotation. It's all dependent on what the mob is doing. And that's something else I want to bring up in Monsters and Memories, right? The mobs aren't as dynamic as they are in Pantheon. So that is in the same vein, the characters themselves, our characters, are much more dynamic than the characters in Monsters and Memories. So from a game pacing, more exciting to play in Pantheon and be very active. We like to make jokes about our active rogue friend Lynx, right?
Yeah.
You have to be an active player, whereas in Monsters and Memories, it is a little more tank and spank, kind of sit back and relax atmosphere. Again, it goes back to what I said earlier. At this stage in my gaming career, I'm looking for something that gets me more engaged and makes me think a little bit outside of the box. How am I going to solve this situation? I wasn't really having to do that in Monsters and Memories.
Right. And I think that also kind of works into how you want to play your character. In Pantheon, you can decide, I want to be this kind of warrior, or I want to be this kind of rogue. Whereas there, you're basically stuck with the 3 buttons you're given.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. Rick,
Be a little more creative.
Yeah, Rick, how did you find it?
I found that the pace was virtually identical to EverQuest. The classes filled the same roles, so the tank went out and just took the damage, and he just effectively stood there, like Ank said, and pressed auto attack. I played an Enchanter, which is a relatively dynamic and fast-paced class, but even that was, you control your charm mob, and you mez and add, and you maybe stun them. You can't deliver any meaningful damage, which I'm fine with, but what was there to really do other than cast mez and sit down? And I saw the same thing out of the healer classes, where it was you stand up, you cast heal, you sit down. Every mob is exactly the same. They don't really do anything different. They just look a little different. And that kind of thing is a little bit tiresome. I felt like I've been there, done that with a lot of games, especially EverQuest, in the years I spent playing that. So that's kind of how I felt. The pacing was definitely at least twice as fast in Pantheon. At least twice as fast.
Okay.
Pantheon has the edge there.
It does.
Definitely. I think
a big one.
Even at low level, Pantheon can feel fast.
So speaking of edges, the crafting system in Monsters and Memories, much more robust currently than the Pantheon one offers. There's way more trade skills. Every character is allowed to pick up all the gathering trade skills and crafting trade skills.
Wow.
And, yes. Since you can get all of them on one character, it leads for a lot of things to do. And they had Lynx, what was it? Dozens? Anka, I know you saw at least a dozen or more of the different trades we could get.
There was a lot of trades, yeah, and I tried to dabble in most. I didn't even get to all, right? I mean, I was dabbling in 5 or so. Yeah, it was wild, and to that point, like the drops in the world help feed into that. Not just nodes, but there's drops off mobs that fed into your crafting skills. So it really made for a very robust system that I think, scaling long term, like you probably need to pick a path, right, so to speak, because the money sinks and the time sinks that you could spend gathering in that game are just astronomical.
Yes. Yeah, and there's many trade skills that are available that aren't even trainable yet. And like, for instance, wagoneering. Well, we don't even really know what that is, but that looks like it could be pretty cool.
It's going to be mount breeding, too.
Right.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Different mounts.
Didn't you see a GM riding a horse at one point?
Yeah, I spent a few minutes outside of the West Gate. I was on my way to town, and I saw the green name, and I was like, what's going on here? And as I approached, he summoned a mount, one of the ones that you see at the stables. Yeah. And sure enough, he got on it, and he was riding around, and he dismounted, and followed him around. I was like, you guys have already got mounts in the works? He's like, yeah, I'm here testing it right now. That's why my name is First. Get it? I was like, you're the first to have a mount. Okay, clever.
Shout out to First, by the way. Very kind GM showed up and buffed our group with cool little skeleton illusions and turned us all into different ghosts.
Oh, that's fun.
Like that was really fun.
He also tried to rescue people in that dungeon, the mushroom dungeon. He was offering to show people how to get out or to just teleport them out because it was incomplete and not everyone knew how to escape that dungeon. So he was hanging out like, hey, if you want to ride out, now's your chance. Or you can just stay here and figure it out on your own. And we did. Nice person.
You experienced EQ, the original EverQuest, right? I mean, the crafting, I don't remember being that involved.
I'm terrible. I'm going to be honest, brother. I don't really do well in crafting. I don't have the patience. There's not been a game yet.
Remember the original EverQuest or played it on 1999 servers?
Yeah, when I played the original EverQuest, I didn't mess with crafting too much. The only thing I was doing was fletching back then to make arrows so I could pull with my arrows. And that had definitely some levels because you had different knocks, different shafts, if I recall, different arrow tips that you could craft, and it would change the range and the damage of the arrows. That was the extent of crafting I did. Yeah, lots of different components there. So, yeah, I wasn't a big crafter back in my EQ days.
It seems like Monsters and Memories has a little bit more to offer than the original EverQuest did. I mean, from what you guys are telling me. So that's a check mark for them there.
I farmed a lot of trees. I made arrows. I collected wood and stuff like that to make torches. Built a lot of campfires. I felt like I was crafting, but it wasn't in-depth crafting.
So that kind of leads to the point, Lynx. Tell us a little bit about what that means. What are campfires? What are torches? What are their purpose?
Oh, man. It's amazing. You can run around and collect wood. You have to get lumberjack skill, buy a lumberjack axe. Super cheap, super easy. And you can run around and collect trees. You harvest them for their wood. And then you have a survivalism, which is a trait or a skill that allows you to combine, I think it's 8 logs, and you can create a campfire anywhere.
What's that do?
It's basically a place for you to rest. You get increased experience rates, I believe up to 15% if you hang out near them long enough for a temporary buff. So the goal is, if you're out exploring, you set up a camp, you literally can set up a camp. Set the fire down, have your puller bring to the camp, and try to kill the mobs within the vicinity of the buff from the campfire, and you get that extra bonus. Plus, it has a light source.
Yes.
You can also...
The light source is some of the most important part of it, because the darkness in Monsters and Memories is pervasive, in that if you don't have infravision, or if you are not a class that has an ability to keep a light source on you, you need to carry torches or start the campfire. Our illustrious friend who played a bard as our puller had to just drop torches as he would run. And in the areas in the shaded dunes that we were in, we had to kind of take out a number of campfires. So it was,
see one right now.
A lot of things going on with that. And as you can see here, a little screenshot here. This is First. This is the GM that kindly showed up and hung out with us for a little while and turned us all into skeletons.
There he is at the bottom, little dwarf.
Yeah. He's a very kind guy.
Let me guess. Kush is Kenny.
No. Kush is a different person.
Oh, okay. Wow.
I see why you would have drawn that conclusion.
Wow.
So in addition to campfires, you can also make torches. You can carry them around as a light source, and it's a really cool feature. You can actually physically place them in the world, and they'll be a stationary light source. So if you're exploring a dungeon or just outside in the public, you can set up a perimeter of torches just for fun.
Yeah.
No buff from the torches, only the campfire.
And I think the screenshot is very telling of just how dark it does get, right? Outside of this light source, there's a vast zone out there, and you cannot see what is out there.
We're in the middle of a huge desert there. And next to this huge desert, actually, Ank, you, I, and another cranky individual found a secret zone.
I will credit our cranky individual with finding that secret zone.
Yes. By just randomly running around, he found us a really cool looking zone, which we've got some of here. This is really well textured and stuff. There's a lot of cool light sources. We found this by just running up one of those strange weirs, and it was actually, I mean, you can tell that the zone isn't finished. There are a few mobs populated in it, but it is gigantic. It took us, Ank, maybe an hour of running around it, and we couldn't even find our way out to begin with.
Right. We were there for a solid hour. It was a firm hour. We tried to do the classic run around the zone wall to try to find our way out, and at the end, it ended up being kind of like a zone box near a zone wall that I'm sure will change with time. But yeah, this was a really cool zone. It was called the Deep Dunes, is what it was actually labeled, if I recall.
Yeah.
And it's basically similar to a throwback from Dungeons & Dragons, like the Underdark, right? It goes into the deep, right? And there's deep races that are going to be implemented. But what was just so neat was the bioluminescence that we got to see within here. It was just completely different than any zone that we saw in the above world, and it was very exciting when our cranky friend found the zone, and I said, "Where did you go?" And he's like, "Oh, I'm in this new zone," and we found it, and it was an adventure to say the least.
It was, and we got a little worried for a while since I was the only one with gate, so we wanted to find our way out. That got us a little scared for about half an hour, but it added to the adventure. And I remember doing things like this now, and I'll always remember finding this. It was pretty cool, and as you can see in this footage here, light sources are not really too much of a problem in this zone, as everything glows. You can even bring around this charm pet that I've got here, and this thing acts as a light source. It's really cool.
They even drop body parts that can act as light sources.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yes, this particular mob drops an eyeball, and that eyeball could be used as a light source.
And it glows that luminescent type of blue, not like red like the fire beetle or...
Yeah, it had a blue-white hue to it instead of that orangey red hue from the torches. Yeah,
and there's wisps in that zone that also drop the light stones.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. The mobs in this zone, I would not say, even if you find yourself here, I wouldn't say that this is a place to go XP too much. This is more of just a place to see, explore for right now, and probably even on the next playtest or two, this will be a populated zone, and they'll be actually accessible with more monsters, possibly quests and stuff like that to see. So, yeah, we had a great time with it. Now, bringing us over to some of the different classes that we've played. Now, I play a controller, as I often do. Ank, you were playing our group's tank for the most time, and since you played the tank in Pantheon and in Monsters and Memories, did you feel that the tanks were adequately equipped? Did you feel like they were still fun? Like, what was your reaction?
Yeah, it was adequately equipped, as you so said. Again, it goes back to what I was saying earlier. It's just a different style of game, whereas, tanks in the EverQuest genre and the Monsters of Memory is, establish some threat, use your taunt, keep it on you. Whereas, Pantheon, same thing. You, as a tank, you want to establish threat, keep it on you, but you can do that in a variety of ways via different damages, right, or different skills. M&M, it was pretty straightforward, right? It's like auto attack, cast taunt. Hopefully, no one pulls it off of you. Pass taunt again if someone does.
Right.
But yeah, the class itself it was fun. It was a fun class. I played a paladin instead of a Shadow Knight or Dire Lord class. I thought maybe a little more group utility with some healing to kind of help out if we got in binds would be pertinent there. So, but yeah, it was enjoyable. I crafted some of my own armor, but yeah, you started out with next to nothing, right? So my intro quest, I got a little tunic, which gave me a little bit of a stat armor, a little bit boost. But I started crafting some copper armor so that I had a better AC, and then I got a couple drops as well throughout my playtest weekend. But yeah, I thought the class as a whole, like it held up. It was a lot of fun, to be a tank in this game and that game. I enjoy the more active aspect, as we said earlier, that I do in Pantheon, right?
And given that active aspect, now let's ask our most active member. Lynx, what did you think of the different classes that were offered that we haven't really seen before? Things like Inquisitor or Spellblade. Now, I know you didn't play them, but what do you think about that?
Man, I'm going to be honest. When I heard about the Inquisitor and its role, it kind of blew my mind because it's, as far as I know, it's a plate class, off tank, maybe main tank, with a lot of strong CC capabilities. So you could be a polar type, off tank in a pinch, and CC support, or maybe even main CC in the group. I didn't get to experience any in my groups, but I was hearing bits and pieces and did a little bit of research, and I'm gathering this information based off of what I read off the skills that are available. It sounds very interesting, and it sounds very unique, and that's hard to do in the MMO industry.
It is.
Fantasy classes have been through so many ringers and formations and styles and variations, but this one's very unique. I can't think of another game that had a similar concept. Maybe the Bard in Classic EQ. They wore plate. They had some CC. They were decent polars, but they had a lot more to offer. But it's interesting. The Spellblade, I'm not a big caster player, but I think if I were to go that route, I would try Spellblade, because it's essentially, from what I gathered, kind of like a proccing melee type. It focuses on two elements, fire and cold, or fire and ice, sorry. It's very aggressive, it's DPS, it's different. I like it. It's built-in procs. I like that stuff. I like to see things pop up on my screen.
Now, Eddie, since you didn't really get that big of a leveled in character to experience other classes and stuff, what did you think, though, of seeing this big, broad list of different classes? Some you've recognized, some you haven't.
Listen, more is better in Eddie G's life, and I think in most gamers' life. We want choices, and there were plenty of choices in this game. I heard from some reliable sources, that some of those sources are here, that a lot of the classes are not fleshed out completely. And that's what we're experiencing in Pantheon. They're still tweaking changes. Some classes sometimes get overpowered, and then they're harnessed back a little bit. I like the fact that there are a lot of classes to choose from. Of course, in typical my fashion, I go to, let me take the rogue. I know exactly what he's going to do. He's going to sneak around, stabby, stabby, stab. That's the thing. But I do like more options. And there's several other options than your basic cookie cutter, like D&D, AD&D classes, classes, almost like Dungeons and Dragons classes. I mean, are there any more? Is it like a necromancer type of? I mean, I didn't even really explore all of them. Like I said, I went right for the cookie cutter. So, yeah. So I think more is better. That's my general rule.
And to be fair between the two games, if we want to talk about more classes, we have to remember this. This game is working off of a framework, so to speak, and that framework is EverQuest. There was a lot of flushed out classes in EverQuest already, and for the most part, bearing the Spellblade and the Inquisitor, it's a reroll of those classes with those abilities. Pantheon has taken those classes and they've redefined them, right? They've given them new abilities. They've changed them around. They're not atypical, right? They're a little different than the traditional, what you would think a rogue could do. So when we're talking about more classes, I think there are more classes in Monsters of Memory because it works off that framework. Whereas in Pantheon, they've made the classes their own. And I think we have to appreciate that as well.
Yeah, definitely. They definitely have. There's And I think you said it the best, Hank. It's a framework that they're building off of, and they have effectively cloned a lot of what EverQuest already did, and they're not doing something that no one has done in the same way before. Whereas that is kind of what Pantheon is doing, and that
Pantheon is reinventing. They are,
Yes.
they are reinventing. They are inventing. I wouldn't even say because they're adding
inventing.
features.
Yes,
They're adding features that aren't in any other MMO. So hats off to them.
right. Which I think leads us to a different type of strategy involved with how we attack, how we deal with the different enemies. Because in M&M, I found that it was the same thing as EverQuest. You see a mob, as long as it's not near other mobs, you pull it. It's going to present the same danger as any other mob that you do. Whereas that's not the case in Pantheon. We have a lot of things in Pantheon that I think we're overlooking that are offered uniquely. For instance, the one I will bring up first is the investigation, where a mob will look at you and sniff towards you and walk at you in Pantheon before they actually aggro on you. And nothing like that was even close to available in Monsters and Memories. Is there anything else you guys can think of that was radically different for strategy?
No, I think you nailed it. The mobs are very static in Monsters and Memories, which is the classic EQ style, and they're much more dynamic in Pantheon. The most dynamic pull that I was really doing in Monsters and Memories was using what the Paladins have, like you guys are familiar with, like a lull or a pacify line, where it reduces the aggro radius of another mob.
Yeah.
So I was lulling some mobs to make sure that I could pull one and not the other at times. And I actually was working in conjunction with Lynx's character because he was an archer, right?
Yeah.
And we found a were-rat camp. And I remember I had to lull 2 different mobs, so we only got one instead of there was like 4 or 5 that could have pulled. But it would have chain pulled, so to speak. That was about as dynamic as I got. Whereas if we were running into that same problem in Pantheon, we would have done what you were saying. We would have used an investigation to maybe draw one out. We still could have used a pacify from another character in Pantheon, because that is a thing. There is a reduction of aggro radius. I believe the Necromancer has that, right? We could have done that. That can still be done in Pantheon, but I had options in Pantheon, whereas there was really only one way to do it in Monsters and Memories.
And Lynx, I know that you're really big on pointing this out every time we pull something that presents a danger, is the affixes and traits. Because you always point that out to us. If there's an iron-willed mob or something in Pantheon, and that entire dynamic of and like dimension was absent entirely in Monsters and Memories. And I feel like that is a very strategic point inside of Pantheon if we succeed or fail in a pull.
It's true. Actually, something about M&M that I experienced was something I didn't expect. Is, for example, if you were to debuff or influence or affect a mob, the only way you would know you've affected them with like a dot or a debuff or CCs, you would actually have to have a spell cast on you.
Yeah.
See those affixes and all the effects on them.
Yeah.
In Pantheon, not so much. It happens. It's there. You can respond. You can relay the information.
Yeah.
You can recon it. Give it back to your group members and express what order of kill or what needs priority. It's so much easier to communicate on the spot. The other, not so much in M&M. I wasn't a big fan.
Yeah, that buff problem where you cannot see a friendly or hostile target's buffs or debuffs in any way, I think that was one of probably my second biggest problem with the game. And I understood the reason why they did it, having, requiring the sense magic buff to be able to see what's on the mob, but that still doesn't include any timers. That doesn't tell you who casted it on there. And, having to consider a mob and read white text instead of looking at just a graphical representation of a buff or debuff, I did not like that. And I hope they don't keep that feature.
And you would also have to understand what those names do that you're reading. Like, you might see a word, not, okay, I see a word. What's it doing? What does it do to the mob? I don't know what you're playing. I've never seen you play this class. I don't know what you're casting on it. I don't know if my ability will stack with your ability. If I knew that was a slow, I could probably deduce maybe my slow won't stack. There's certain rules. But that information's not there for me to understand, and I don't feel like I'm learning enough.
What about the targeting?
Oh.
It's a big difference from what I heard.
I thought so.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't find anything. What's the difference in the targeting?
So I found that the Monsters and Memories contains tab targeting. And Pantheon has what they're labeling as smart targeting. So wherever your camera is looking, wherever your character seems like it actually be looking at, when you press tab is what you'll target. And I gotta say, it's one of the best features that Pantheon has polished out, and that it's almost telepathic. It knows what me as the player wants to target, and I will almost always get the right target in Pantheon. Whereas in Monsters and Memories, man, you could press that tab button 8 times and not get the right guy. It's got work to do on it, but I'm glad it exists. At least there's a way to target things,
Okay.
So they build out a lot of stuff like that. I recommend, or I recognize that they're trying. They're putting in an effort, and we're critiquing this a lot, and we all have to take a step back though and remember that this isn't even really an alpha yet. This is an early access. This isn't alpha or beta. This is before that. It's development stage, but it feels good. And the world that they've built out seems big. They have a lot of zones already. They have a lot of content. They've got a city that is gigantic. You could spend hours in this city and never explore it all. And I don't think that it's really fair to compare that to Pantheon's cities yet, because there haven't been any that have launched yet. And the outdoor places, and Eddie, I think you would agree with me on this, the outdoor places in Pantheon are pretty well developed. They're well textured. They're well placed.
Definitely. I mean, yeah. And all kinds of, it makes sense. I like the different climates that they offer. Yeah, I mean, I think the world building, again, they're in Monsters and Memories is in the infancy. I was impressed, like you said, of the cities. I did find 3 zones. So there's other zones that can be viable through travel with ships, which in Pantheon, that doesn't exist yet. Although the ship was broken in Monsters and Memories, and I wound up in a drink for 2 hours. I could have had Lynx build me a raft with all that wood he was collecting.
That will be an option one day. M&M does have that.
You need an Elwood raft to find him. It was like
Eddie?
Well, it was like Gilligan's Island out there. Anyway, it's got a lot of potential, but I also see the world building. If you look at that map, at what they're talking about, we haven't even met the Queen yet in Pantheon. She's right there. We can't zone in.
Yeah.
So world building, I think they're kind of ahead, but I don't know. I guess I don't know about programming, but I would assume that programming something with that kind of graphics is a lot easier to design than something that's multi-layered and a higher quality graphics and stuff like that. That's just my layman opinion.
Yeah. And I think we all have kind of that same feeling on the world building. Now, to kind of sum up our final thoughts, I think the thing that I disliked most about Monsters and Memories was the death process. When you die, you would lose your spell book. It'd be on your corpse, and if you were a full-blown caster, you had to retrieve your spell book and all of your gear, which meant that you ran back powerless completely. And I know people say, well, the solution to this is keep another spell book in your bank, but spells are expensive. Spells can be rare. What if you die 3 times trying to recover it? This is a very punishing mechanic that I genuinely and earnestly do not enjoy, and I hope you get rid of it or find some happy medium. What do you guys think in terms of like a closing remark on how it went with M&M?
I hope they expand on the merchants. I discovered, and all of us discovered, that not every merchant will take every piece of crappy gear that you got for vendor and give you some coin for it. Some people will turn you away because they have no interest in it, because that NPC doesn't actually produce or sell or use that material. Mm-hmm. So if you go to a cook, he'll buy all the meats and the animal skins, maybe not the skins, but the bloods and bones and stuff like that. You'll go to a smith, he'll buy all the old scrappy armor. You'll go see the cloth crafter and all those other people. Like, it's different. In Pantheon, it doesn't have that. You could just find any vendor and just offload all your gear. It's different. So I hope Pantheon takes a note of that and maybe finds a way to make it a little more different in that aspect. I really enjoyed that with Eminem.
My closing remark would be around weight and weight reduction. So in Monsters and Memories, we went back to the old EverQuest where I'm encumbered with copper coins. If I've been out too long fighting mobs that are dropping coins, I had like 1,200 copper on me, and it was like eating into my ability to carry much anything else.
Yeah.
And to that same vein, the inventory was quite small, and the bag system is a little less intuitive as it is in Pantheon.
Right.
You have different size bags, and the weight though, the weight was an issue for me. Being a strength-based character, I thought I was going to be in good shape, but even as a strength-based character, I was quickly encumbered with my lower level, cheaper armor, which is understandable, right? That's part of the game is you need to craft some better armor to lower the reduction in the weight reduction of the armor itself.
Yep.
So yeah, my remark is like the coin weight is it's antiquated. It just slows players down, and like again, like I've said, like at this day and age, like my time is valuable, right? Like I don't want to be like having to leave a camp just because I've been earning money. It feels like a punishment to me. So maybe, I'm fine with like armor weighing a heavy amount, but the coinage weight I think is just something that no one liked in EverQuest and doesn't really need to carry over here.
Especially the poor monks.
Yeah.
Especially monks.
I think, well, there's a lot of, I guess, quality of life things I didn't like about this game. The coinage is one of them. The no bind points. No, where you could stuck bind if you got in a little bit of a mess and hairy predicament. Just little things like that. Also, not every NPC is going to buy and also the experience penalties. Now, I didn't get an experience penalties. How were they harsh? The experience penalties?
They were stiff, but at the same vein, experience was flowing pretty well. So you would make it up pretty quick. But yeah, I think it was about half a bub, right? So we're talking about maybe 10%-ish.
Yeah.
I could be off on that.
But on top of that, see, Pantheon, I think, is fair with their experience loss. Plus, when I first started playing the game, Pantheon, I was like, wow, I don't lose all my gear like I did in EverQuest. That's fair. The fact that your spell book is gone, that is punishing a player, and it's going to turn off a lot of people playing that game.
Well, it's also tough. We've talked about it's like if you die, or let's say there's a real life emergency situation that you're having, and you got to log out, and you're deep down in a dungeon, and you can't get out, and your character dies, or like, what are you supposed to do here? Like, most of us are adults, and if we're going back to the Monsters and Memories, and most of these people are going off their memories, and I want
to meet the developer that says, "Hey, we gotta punish these people. Well, we gotta take everything away from them." That's not fun. So my remark is
something that Rake and I were actually chatting about this, and I'll credit Rake with the idea. Was what if there was a spine stone just specific for the class that had maybe like a 6-hour timer, so you're not using it to exploit the game, but it's like one of those emergency situations where it's just like, hey, like I have got to go. I've got to leave this group. I can't leave my character here. I can't spend 30 minutes getting him out. Like, and just maybe having it send you not necessarily to your bind, but to like a safe place in the starting town, right? That way you're not manipulating where it goes. Maybe just something that like that gets you out of there.
Yeah. Yeah. I definitely
my remarks. My closing remarks is I'm staying in Pantheon. I love Pantheon. It's friendly. It's user friendly, and until it implodes or whatever it lies at, I'm Pantheon all the way.
I do think there's room for both games in the marketplace, and I will be enjoying both games until I'm not enjoying both games.
I think Pantheon has the lead in my interest still. I'm a little more invested. I enjoy the gameplay a little more. I like what's available. I'm looking forward to what's still to come for Pantheon. Though, the classic in me, the EQ in me, still craves a little bit of what Eminem is offering right now. So, I'm going to follow it. I'm going to go through the playtests. But I'm still in love with Pantheon.
I think I agree with all of you in that I liked Eminem quite a bit. It has a long way to go, and there are some frustrations that I think really need to be addressed. And there are some real benefits to Pantheon that we haven't really discussed here, and like for instance, real quick, is the offensive and defensive targeting system. That's totally absent from M&M. I really loved that in Pantheon. One thing M&M's really got up on over Pantheon is that we can link items in the chat.
That
VR, please get on that whenever you can. It's a serious quality of life.
yesterday. I'm tired of reading stats of loot to people.
Yeah.
You're like, what drop?
Yeah.
Those
Yeah,
links, but something could be done.
It's
easily.
pretty major, and I like Pantheon more than I like M&M, but like Link said, I'm going to check out the next playtest again. I'm going to keep looking at what's happening with the news of it, and when it finally does come out into whatever alpha or whatever the one that they were talking about in January, I'm going to check it out. I would be happy to pay a sub even for this game, same as Pantheon. Just as long as it can be a relatively updated and continuous flow of things. And that's really our take on this, is that both are good games. They both have their strengths. They both have their flaws and weaknesses. They're both developed by very small teams of under 20 people or around there. So these are not huge companies developing it, and they all have that EverQuest background in them, where you can feel the DNA of EQ in both games, and it screams at you pretty hard in Monsters and Memories, whereas in Pantheon it's kind of like a slow burn, and you see, I recognize this, I saw that. So I think that's kind of how we all feel about that. And we do have a Patreon available now, so check it out whenever you can, and remember to like and subscribe. We are very happy to have given this information to you, and we will all see you next time.